I don't like to vote, but I did vote this time. And I don't like to vote because I don't believe in any of them. And this time I really felt like I know Trump well, I love Trump personally, and what we were looking at was just so awful and totalitarian and stupid. And it wasn't even the arguments that I disagreed with from the Kamala Harris. It's weird to even say her name now. Who was that exactly? It was like a bad dream. But it wasn't even so much the arguments I disagreed with, though I definitely disagreed with the arguments. It was the style of argument that drove me completely bonkers, summarized most crisply by "shut up, racist." Whatever you said, it was "shut up, racist." And it's like, but wait, first of all, I'm not a racist, but that's not even the point. The point is, I just told you what I think. I just asked you an entirely legitimate question, mostly, what the hell are you doing? And rather than answer it, you didn't pay me the respect that you would a human being. You treated me like a slave or an animal by telling me to stop barking. Shut up, racist. And I won't put up with that because I'm not a slave or an animal. I'm an American citizen, an adult man who pays his taxes. So, I ask people questions for a living, and very often I get answers that I don't care for, that I disagree with, that I think are stupid. But at least they're answers. At least the person responding is treating me like a human being with a soul created in the image of the Creator. He's paying me the respect that every human being is due. When you ask a direct question to someone in charge, you are due. That person is morally bound to give you an answer. He's not bound to agree with you, but he's bound to stop and answer your question. And the left never did that. They would dismiss you out of hand. You are not worth listening to. Be quiet. And that's, of course, where the impulse to censorship comes from. It comes from the belief that you don't deserve to speak because you're not fully human. They own you. And that's what I voted against above all. I voted against a million different things that I hated about the last administration. Their insane desire to start pointless wars around the world. Their total unwillingness to protect this country domestically, to protect the people who live here, to protect the territorial integrity of the country, bringing in tens of millions of people illegally, giving them free stuff the second they get here, making a mockery of citizenship. I hated all of that. I hated all of that. But the thing I hated most was their total unwillingness to answer any question about why they were doing what they were doing. Because it was just too insulting. And every single time I would just feel like raising the middle finger and screaming obscenities, which is not an adult response, I'll concede, but that's how I felt. And I think that's really at the heart of why the Epstein thing is so distressing. I mean, the guy was some weird sex freak who was abusing girls. We knew that. But the fact that the U.S. government, the one that I voted for, refused to take my question seriously and instead said, "Case closed, shut up, conspiracy theorist," was too much for me. And I don't think the rest of us should be satisfied with that. And by the way, let me just say really quickly, because I was so mad about it that I think I found out part of what's going on. I think we are going to find out more. And I think the truth, for whatever it's worth, in case you're interested, is that the DOJ didn't release lots of incriminating sex videos with Epstein and his billionaire pals because they don't have them. They don't have them because when the original search warrant was served, 2007, I think, possibly 2006, I think 7, it was basically designed to protect Epstein. The search warrant was written in such a way to make sure that the feds never got their hands on the actually incriminating evidence. It's another way of saying the cover-up has been going on since 2007, almost 20 years. And so the real question is not, was Jeffrey Epstein a weirdo who was abusing girls? Yes, we can answer that. The real question is, why was he doing this, on whose behalf, and where did the money come from? And those are the questions that need to be answered. And I think it's entirely fair to ask them. And it's not adequate to say anyone who asked them is somehow desecrating the memory of little girls who died in Texas. They're not going to put up with that answer. I don't care who gives that answer. That is not acceptable. And I think the real answer is Jeffrey Epstein was working on behalf of intel services, probably not American. And we have every right to ask, On whose behalf was he working? How does a guy go from being a math teacher at the Dalton School in the late 70s with no college degree to having multiple airplanes, a private island, and the largest residential house in Manhattan? Where did all the money come from? And no one has ever gotten to the bottom of that because no one has ever tried. And moreover, it's extremely obvious to anyone who watches that this guy had direct connections to a foreign government. Now, no one's allowed to say that that foreign government is Israel because we have been somehow cowed into thinking that that's naughty. There is nothing wrong with saying that. There is nothing hateful about saying that. There's nothing anti-Semitic about saying that. There's nothing even anti-Israel about saying that. I've spent my entire life pretty much in Washington, where I knew and loved a number of people, including one very close person who worked at CIA. That has never prohibited me from saying, I think the CIA has done some horrible things. Murdered a bunch of people, participated in the murder of a sitting U.S. president. It's got a whole trail of crimes. That doesn't make me a disloyal American. It doesn't make me anti-American in any sense. I was born here. My family's been here for hundreds of years. I love this country. That's why I live here. So criticizing the behavior of a government agency does not make you a hater. It makes you a free person. It makes you a citizen. You're allowed to do that because you're not a slave. You're a citizen. And you have a right to expect that your government will not act against your interests, and you have a right to demand that foreign governments not be allowed to act against your interest. That's not creepy. It shouldn't be forbidden. And yet all of us have trained ourselves to believe that you can't say that somehow. That that's like too naughty and forbidden. And the effect of making that off limits has been to create a lot of resentment, and I'll say it, hate online. Where people feel like they can't just say, like, what the hell is this? You have the former Israeli prime minister living in your house. You have had all this contact with the foreign government. Were you working on behalf of Mossad? Were you running a blackmail operation on behalf of a foreign government? By the way, every single person in Washington, D.C. thinks that. I've never met anyone who doesn't think that. I don't know any of them that hate Israel, but no one feels they can say that. Why? And I think the longer that we play along with it, the more subterranean and creepy and hateful the conversation actually becomes. So I think it's better just to say it right out loud. Did this happen? And of course that question has been asked to the government of Israel, and their answer is, we're not going to tell you. And I think our answer should be, no. As long as we're sending you money, if you were committing crimes on our soil, we have an absolute right to know, did you do this or not? And yet everybody has been so brainwashed into thinking that's somehow an expression of hate or bigotry, when it's not. It's a baseline question that every U.S. citizen has a right to an answer on. What the hell was this? And by the way, if it turns out that it was nothing at all, that somehow Jeffrey Epstein really did earn $165 million giving tax advice to somebody, which is, for the record, a lot more than most people pay their accountants, and that none of this was actually a foreign intel operation, and that there was no blackmail involved, that actually Bill Gates was just hanging on the island because the weather was especially good. No one was videotaped doing anything immoral or illegal, and then that was used against them to get them to obey. If all of that is false, then just tell me how it's false. But don't call me a lunatic. And when Fox News runs a piece, as they did yesterday by Hugh Hewitt, saying that anybody who's got even more questions about Epstein is some kind of nutcase with an unhappy personal life, who's spending too much time on Twitter in the fervid fever swamps of conspiracies, up yours, buddy. Then why don't you answer the question then? Don't let anybody insult you, anybody, and I mean anybody, ever get away with insulting you instead of answering a legitimate question. Okay? Ever. And by the way, you will hear certain people say, well, that means you hate the person. No, it doesn't. I've got a bunch of kids. I would never let them get away with that. If I caught one of my kids, smoking weed in the bathroom at my house, and I was like, are you smoking weed in the bathroom? Shut up, racist! You hate me! No, you're my child. I don't hate you. Answer the freaking question. Were you smoking weed in the bathroom or not? I'm not the criminal here. You seem to be.